Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome from England, although a very cold evening here in England. I'm Nik Turner. Joining us this evening, we've got a great panel. We're going to talk everything about tech in education. So I think to start with, what we'll do is we will go round and I'll get you all to introduce yourselves so that everybody knows who you're talking to. So let's start with April.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick. It's an honor to be here with this illustrious panel. My name's April Welch. I'm the Director of Esports at Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. I'm also the AVP for Strategic Initiatives. So what that means is on campus, I get to bring new things to life. And I'm the co-chair of the Education Committee at ESTA, and thrilled to be here. And I'm working on a couple of new esports builds. So I'm here to share and to learn.
Excellent. And then James, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Esports Trade Association, for having me, and obviously to Nick. So my name is James Fraser-Murison. I'm the Director of Esports here at Queen Mary's College in London, and I helped write the first ever Esports BTEC. I'm a national award winner. I'm a NACEF mentor. I hope to be working very closely with Game Plan and our next colleague Simon, as we're using that, which we'll get onto later today at QMC. And I'm also a Yo-Yo Tech Esports Arena consultant. Thank you.
And Simon?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Simon, and first of all, thanks Nick for the invitation to guest in the Esports Trade Association LinkedIn Live. So I'm working with sales for Gameplan, and we are EdTech educational company from Sweden. And to just give a short introduction, we help gaming centers and schools across the world to launch and manage their esports programs, academies, and other educational activities with our learning management system and our curriculum solution.
Excellent. And then before we go on to the topic, my name's Nik Turner. I'm a lecturer and lead on the esports here at Queen Mary's College. I'm sat with one of the arenas behind me, which we have James to thank for. I sit on the education committee for the Esports Trade Association, for which this event is we have to thank for. I'm the chief education advisor for Esports Scotland. I have a consultancy business in education and esports. And that's probably about all you need to know about me. So let's get on with the tech in esports education conversation. And I think we'll start with yourself, James, because you've been on an exciting journey. Would it be fair to say over the last kind of 5 years?
Yeah, I think that's one way of describing it. So thank you to the guests who are kind of chiming in as well and saying hello in the chat. So it started a few years ago here at QMC, where we do enrichment, which are effectively non-accredited lessons. So they're kind of sessions where you turn up and you do a hobby or an interest. And unsurprisingly, 4 or 5 years ago, there is and always has been a real interest in gaming, and particularly esports. So we made sure that for 1 hour a week, there was an opportunity for a teacher to be in a classroom with students who did nothing more than games. So it wasn't accredited to a qualification, it was just fun. And of course, as we go through this conversation, please remember that fun is okay. Fun is allowed in education. And funnily enough, it proved to be an incredibly popular session. So we had to put more sessions on. We found that students were willing to wait an hour after college to kind of game with their friends, even though they could probably do that at home. And that led to a really nice conversation where I was lucky enough to be involved with working alongside the British Esports Association and Pearson to help write the first ever Esports BTEC, which is now globally available and is being sort of delivered across the globe, as I say. And the wonderful kind of upshot of that is that you've got all of these kids from different backgrounds, regardless of their kind of levels online and their status, but they've just got a real passion for one of the biggest industries in the world, now being able to get a qualification out of that. That's then led to a grant I put together with what's called a local education provider, or LEP, here in the UK, where I proposed that we revolutionise an existing block and put in one of the first, if not the first, esports gaming arenas for post-16 education, which is where my wonderful colleague Nick is at the moment. And that in itself also brought competition entry to the British Esports Association. So now we have 8 teams who compete every Wednesday. We are the national champions in one of those games as well. And we've seen student numbers go from about 40 odd now to around 170, 180 students this academic year, doing a variety of gaming and or education. And the rest, as they say, is history. And that's where we kind of get to bring in the others conversation and kind of take it from there, I think.
And I think through that journey, James, we've seen how tech industry is so keen to get involved with esports generally, and education, the formal education of esports here in the UK, has kind of like opened the door for tech companies to start engaging with esports, engaging with education, which can only benefit both sides of the table.
Yeah, I think absolutely. What we set up within the course and what we tell our students, as you know, is that the esports course isn't going to make you a better gamer. That is not what the course is about. It's about preparing you for industry, and what and April and Simon will be able to vouch for in their different capacities is how that is part of, as I say, one of the biggest industries out there, where we know that there are 1 billion tech jobs needed by 2030. And so therefore the synergy and the obvious kind of relationship between students and employers within esports and industry means that it's an obvious fit. So we're able to have conversations with students about having an esports career and maybe working for April or Simon, and not therefore being a pro gamer, but also to have a course where you specifically engage with employers. So we are preparing the right type of student for these new exciting jobs that are out there. And obviously esports tech is a huge part of that.
And we'll come back to kind of like the journey, the yo-yo tech journey, which really started with QMC. But before we do that, Simon, just talk us through game plan and kind of like how game plan developed, where you started and what that's kind of opened out into and where you're at now.
Yeah, so I mean, we have been developing the product game plan for over, I think it's about 4 to 5 years, and the final product was finished in the beginning of last year. So then we started to sell the product, our learning management system, and we had a really successful year last year where we went from 15 to 380 customers. With the help of Generation Esports, we've been able to get a lot of traction within the American school system, especially within the K-12, where middle school and high school is our biggest focus point currently. But we work worldwide, so we have customers in the Nordics, in the UK, for you guys' example, and around the other countries as well.
And just explain what the platform is and how it works and what it does. Obviously, we're familiar with it and slowly getting to grips with it, but we can see the potential there. So just talk through, what an educational institute may be interested to know in terms of why they should have game plan.
Yeah, so game plan, as I said, is a learning management system where you basically build, or educators and schools can build a sustainable structure where you can scale up your lessons, you can build up your own courses, and see and track the students' progress in a very easy way. We also have, together with Generation Esports, as I mentioned before, and I also saw Alex in the chat, we have developed courses that are drawing from the CTE, IST, and CEL standards in the United States school system, and is focused on the STEM subjects. So we've been seeing a lot of results in terms of GPA improvements, better attendance rates, and also reaching students that normally doesn't attend in extracurricular activities. But the platform really builds a sustainable structure where you can, without prior expertise teach these subjects and with the help of esports and gaming to reach more students, basically.
And I think what you just touched on there in terms of engagement is really important, because one thing that we notice here at QMC is that ability of the student to suddenly commit to something because they want to do it. And if the tech is right and the setup is right, that's the difference between recruitment in the first place and then maintained attendance and high attendance and engagement. And one of the things that we found is that we have colleges in the competitive area, in the local area, and students are kind of literally taking the commute or the journey past those colleges to come to us because of the tech that we've got here. And with the game plan platform, that was one of the things that excited us most. I don't know how it may work for you, April, but kind of here in the UK, we use Google Classroom and Teams and all these other platforms, which are great and very functional, and they work in lots of different ways. And what we noticed with Game Plan was it's designed for esports, it's designed for gaming. And when the students log in to do a task or pick up an assignment, they are instantly engaged with the platform. It's not just Google Drive, it's not just Teams, and all of those little things are why it's so why tech has such an opportunity to work, but work really effectively and efficiently within education. So kind of like from that side of it, April, what's your experiences?
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And I think what happens a lot is when newbies throw up esports labs, they worry all about the hardware and they forget about the component that brings the people in and the community. And platforms like Game Plan and others that we use. We use Discord a lot for that whole connection to the community. That's where we always start when I'm building out new esports arenas. I'm working on one for Truman College right now. We start with what is our use case? How are we going to bring these kids in? How are we going to keep these seats filled and a community happening that is enjoying each other, that is, that has really, it's often the very first time that, at least in America, that folks from all different backgrounds, all different races, all different creeds, all different classes come together. Gaming is the great equalizer, I think. And it's serving a purpose it's secretly serving a purpose that many people have tried to accomplish, and making friends across cultures and across age groups and across gender. And I think, considering the layouts, like your layout is fantastic behind you. I just love it. But building to the specs of making sure that you're bringing a second home to a group of people. I think that's really, really important. And the software does that too. Like, we don't just build hardware, we build a digital world too. So that includes Discord, that includes Game Plan, that includes Twitch, that includes often Patreon or YouTube or Twitter, really looking at the digital footprint as well as the physical footprint of these spaces is very important. And that informs what you teach in the spaces. So it's not just gaming. And yes, the fun is important, and I love the fun, and I will be the first to bring the fun. But we also bring sort of that, the educational component that you need to promote yourself, that whole marketing, the business side of that, all of that comes with it. And in these spaces, we find ways to do that in a fun way and give people really access to those who are performing. Like right now, all our stats are on the line in esports. You've got 2 followers. We know you've got 2 followers. So our kids learn from those who are really, doing the work.
And I think there's some comments in the chat, like, which you've just kind of touched on there, April. Like Philip Harrington says, esports a great community builder, and Sean Blackwell says community is everything. Yeah. And that's what education can do anyway, but the nature of esports and gaming with the tech is exactly what that does. And Alex Herbie said the effective use of a learning management system absolutely changes the field of education, which it does, which is what I was saying with regards to when the students see it, same as what we did, because we all sat in an office, put it on the screen, and we were like, yep, okay, like that's good, we like that. And I think we've already kind of like hit some of those key important points in terms of education and tech, in how they go together. Now, there's a lot of talk in esports around the globe about kind of sponsorships, investments, return on investments, and how that model works. And we know some of the bigger tech companies that decided not to jump into esports in the early days have kind of like have lived to regret it, and are now kind of like buying their way in, as it were. But for the smaller tech companies, like Yo-Yo Tech, which we'll talk about, it's a good and affordable way for these companies to become stakeholders in esports through education. And something certainly what we found is some of those smaller organizations or smaller brands coming into that space. So if we talk about Yo-Yo Tech, because obviously they've gone from what they were to kind of being the hardware partner for one of the biggest orgs in the UK. And James, we both had dealings and worked with Yo-Yo Tech, but just tell me how that kind of like started. What was that process point of Yo-Yo Tech entering the education space?
Yeah, absolutely. So it it all came around when I went to Yo-Yo Tech, who are about 10 minutes down the road from where Nick and I teach. They're a local company, but also a global company because they're a subsidiary of a company called Centerprise International, and they had a focus on traditionally B2C. So the really nice PCs you can see behind you was one of their main business focuses. But in conjunction with the launch of the arena, which they helped subsidize, and the esports BTEC, going back to your point and what April was saying as well, this is an opportunity for them to obviously get a foot in the door with business. So there's ROIs there are kind of scanning across the pages for all of the MDs and what have you, but also you've got an opportunity to again use tech and use potential new ways of recruiting individuals and talent, and that's in some small part preparation for what education and university or what have you and apprenticeships beyond should be about. So then the focus of last year, and as I say, I was fortunate to work for Yo-Yo Tech for 12 months now, is they sort of pivoted away from the traditional method, and now it's much more of a B2B approach, and that's where they are delivering esports arenas, and that includes all the peripherals and the chairs and the mice and what have you. So yeah, we're really lucky that they did our arena, but they've also done Newcastle United's gaming arena, which again Nick and I were part of, and the owners of Newcastle United are the same people who did the merger with Face It and
yes.
Yeah, absolutely, all of those sort of backers. So that small world suddenly not that small, is it? And over in the UK, we also worked with Media City, which is a huge establishment up in Manchester to do with traditional television and approaches. And again, that's just another way of being involved in the esports industry. And we also use software, you can see that on the screens behind you, called GG Circuit. And what that means is we're able to kind of pixie boot off one particular server, and it means that we can lock down all 56 of our machines, or we can sort of load 20 of them, 3 of them, 6 of them, because what we're also able to do with the advancement of technology is to use our arenas for hireable boot camps and children's parties. So then we use the software to say there's some 8-year-olds coming in, therefore they're going to have the template that allows them to access Roblox or what have you, or Fall Guys. They're not going to get access to CSGO or Warzone, because then there's a whole load of different problems. And you can use that management tool to have bespoke parties and setups. And again, there's therefore a whole load of careers that go behind those types of software. So you can constantly sort of unpick at this thread of esports jobs without ever having to use the word esports. And the tech that comes with that is just an advancement of where we're at, really.
And I think with the when you start introducing this technology, so the students here are now very used to coming into these amazing facilities, and like the HyperX lab we've got upstairs, and so it becomes the norm. And I think, I don't know if you'd agree, maybe Simon or April, that what esports and education is doing is actually pushing technology further within education more generally, because we're having kind of like the different platforms, and then the GG Circuit and the software that we use to control the arenas. All of a sudden, other departments are seeing that and kind of thinking, hang on a minute, we can apply. Why aren't we using this? Would you think that would be a fair statement to say that like esports is helping to push technology within education generally?
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And to James's point, it's, that's another thing that when you start a new arena that you really need to consider who's going to maintain this, because often when people make their budgets, they fail to realize that they're going to need to do some updates and some maintenance every single day. And having that software that can, lock things down, that can reset, that can apply patches, that can do, all of the the things that take time. That's so important to plan for that ahead of time. And in terms of pushing the envelope for your universities, often big universities have deals that were set up by their Office of Technology Services 20 years ago, and you have one vendor and one vendor alone that you can use. So I find that what happens, I've been, in the university builds that I've done, we were able to push the limit on the accounting side as well, and add, the company I use is SHI. They've been really amazing. They're a full service place, stop. And they've got, just like you were saying, they've got the chairs, the furniture, the computers, the lighting, the CPU options, and they're big enough to have everything in stock. So they didn't have the supply chain issues that others did, in part because they have, they're out of Korea. So I think, really making that, making administrators who are building on higher ed campuses realize that, you do have some power, even though if they tell you, you have to use X vendor, because we've always used X vendor, just go through the process of adding a new vendor.
And I think talking about game plan and kind of why game plan are ahead of the game, one of the units that we teach is about skills, strategies, and analysis. And part of that, the second kind of the back end of that module, they have to do performance analysis and performance review, which includes VOD reviews. And when we were kind of like playing around with the software, there's already material up there for them to practice their VOD reviews before they have to record themselves or the team that they're reviewing performing. And again, just a great kind of like tool that's there on the platform that they see as their classroom. That's it's part of their daily routine, and it becomes the norm that, oh look, we can just do some VOD reviews over here. Oh, I don't know how to do this in Rocket League. Well, okay, I'll watch these tutorials. I mean, in terms of the game plan platform, Simon, it's obviously very accomplished already, and I mean that like in the greatest way. How do you see that platform potentially developing, expanding, and kind of like what's going on there that you're looking to add to it?
So I mean, we have been very, very lucky in terms of having our partnership with Generation Esports. We are getting a lot of value in terms of what is the schools, what do they want to have as a next feature. We are doing a lot of stuff in terms of exams, how to build up the exams to make it easier for the schools to grade, and it's a lot of different stuff that are going to happen within the platform. And a lot has happened throughout the last year. But a VOD review, as you talked about, is going to be a huge improvement that are going to be launched, where the students are going to be able to use voiceovers within the VOD review itself, and also the coach or teacher will be able to make comments with the voice as well, since we are seeing a lot of scenarios, both in terms of the game specifics, but also for the curriculum itself that are not within a specific game. It most of the time takes more than just a few sentences to explain what happens within the specific scenario. So that's going to be a huge improvement. And there's a lot of other stuff that are on our roadmap to be implemented into the platform.
And we've got here in the UK it's this month now, James, the Bet Global 2023 event. It's been around. I was working at the Bet Show sort of 25 years ago on various bits and bobs, whereas now a big chunk of the Bet Show is dedicated to esports. And last year was the launch of the esports section at the show, at the conference. It's it's the biggest in the country, in the XL Centre. And last year was phenomenal, I would say, James, as a launch to the BTech and esports. It's happening again at the end of the month, and it's bigger yet again. So I think esports is starting to like dominate that tech industry. And when we were there last year, on one of the stands, we were one of our major kind of visitors, the people that were speaking to us, were those the heads of IT, as opposed to kind of like the esports course leaders. It was very much the IT thing, because when we set up, James will smile when I say this, when the first day here at QMC that we had our student championships on the Wednesday afternoon, and all of a sudden we had kind of like 50 machines on the go. Things didn't quite go to plan, which was an oversight on our part in terms of tech. Would you say, James?
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to your first point, yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Bet, as you said, Nick, is going to be huge for esports this year. It was sort of tentatively introduced last year because it was back on again after COVID, and I always say this, but esports is a $1 billion industry and niche at the same time. It's weird, isn't it? But COVID kind of pushed to the fore esports as an industry, particularly with an educational framework and tech, more during COVID, because it was one of the few entertainment industries and sporting industries that still continued. It's one of the great things about it. And so one or two of the main speakers now on the main stage will be with an esports focus, and that's just great to see. And going back to kind of where we are now, Nick, in the arena and what have you, of all the talks that you and I were fortunate to do, we will always say, I can spend an hour telling you the wonderful things that we've done. I can spend a week telling you all the things we got wrong. And, and that's part of the process. But we, the people who are in the chat here and like-minded individuals like ourselves, we are so keen to make this all work that we will bounce and share ideas together. And you listen to Simon and how game plan's already evolving and what we've done with it as well, and April being correct. And just because you've used X vendor before doesn't necessarily mean they're the best ones to progress you and move you forward. And I remember going away from my summer holidays 3 years ago. We had 24 gaming machines then, and I said, right, we need a specific switch, and we need it all set up. We need a proper hard line, all of this. And the head of IT said no, and I came back and they gave us all individual Wi-Fi towers, and it just blew my mind. It didn't work. It was chaos, and it was because we got to get out there and get out of the habit and speak to the students. They are one of your best assets, particularly for the gaming and esports industry, because they're doing it. They're all building their own PCs anyway, and speak to the likes of each other and conversations in the chat and all of that. And I don't like using the word soft skills. I like to use the word essential skills, and all of this within the ecosystem is what it's all about, and progressing and learning. And as the tech advancements come along, we'll just get a bit better with it each time, I hope.
Simon, have you had, when you're dealing with schools, universities and academies, have you had kind of like any resistance from them for specific reasons?
I would say no to that question. Most of the time, it's very, very positive. When we are showing the platform and showing what it's capable of doing, everyone loves it. We get really, really good feedback. Most of the time, it goes down to funding, it comes down to money, how to purchase the platform itself. We have built the platform in a way so it's very, very easy to apply the platform to what a gaming center or a school is already doing. And it's very, very easy to also start a new program using the platform, since we are offering a bunch of game titles like Rocket League, Fortnite, League of Legends, and so on, where we have content that basically teach you how to become your own coach. And together with the gaming concepts by Generation Esports, where we have teachers' instructions to do. Basically, the teacher only needs to follow the instructions to be able to teach the courses. So it's very, very easy, and you don't need to have a coach or a teacher that has been in esports or gaming before. You can teach it without prior expertise. So most of the time, it comes down to how are we going to fund this? How are we going to find the money? So that has been the biggest thing.
Nick, I can answer that too. For me, the problems become pedagogical. When people when I come in saying I need to build a gaming lab, they're thinking, we've got professors here working on curing cancer. Why, April, do we need to fund your gaming lab? And really, you're up against not just the people who think gaming is a waste of time, and the people who have studies in the States that claim, and all of them have been debunked, that gaming leads to violence. Those people are real, and often in conservative universities. And I often, we do need more academic research in the esports space, so that when people like me are advocates for esports and advocates for funding esports programs, we can point to studies that say, it builds confidence, it helps with resiliency, our grades are higher, our kids think faster, their motor skills are, all the stress relief is there. There's so much to esports that complement a college student's life, that I think, we need more studies that the higher ups, those above me, would listen to. And it's hard to compete for space on campuses, in part because there's just so much demand for space. That's usually the types of pushback that I get. But I think, to Philip Harrington's point in the chat, connecting what they do to real tech certificates, like, when our kids set up a LAN, they've done networking at the highest level, and they make sure the speeds are there, and they do every last thing that you need to do. And like, when they research what equipment they want, they've done more research than anybody on our IT team. They know the brand, they know the speed, they know exactly what they want. So, getting them to trust our students that's really also where the pushback comes from.
But sometimes it's like pushing an open door there, isn't it, April? Because they do know it all, and they will know certain things better than IT managers, because it's also not an IT manager's job to know everything about IT. Like when I used to teach English, and a kid would go, "Have you read this book?" And I'd go, "No," and they go, "You teach English." And then I taught film. "Have you watched this film?" "No." "But you're not supposed to know everything, but you can work with others to learn it." And the World Economic Forum says that communication, problem solving, logistics, team play, those are 4 out of the 10 assets that industry employers want. I always go on about that, because that's not us 4, us 5 saying that. That's the World Economic Forum. So all of this is valid. All of this is useful. And you're right, it shouldn't be. We should be able to live in a world where we can all put in our due diligence and hard work for curing cancer and showing different ways of reducing stress and anxiety through gaming. Both are needed. Both are a necessity. It's not for me to judge on what percentage, but it's good to be able to have those conversations where you can, really.
Absolutely.
See.
Has Nick gone?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sometimes he gives me that look in meetings. Sometimes it's tricky to say.
Nick's gone. No, I think
go.
oh, there, he's back. He's back.
Okay, so April, now you're one of kind of on the Esports Trade Association's Education Committee. You are kind of one of the biggest advocates of technology in education and esports. So I know you've got a massive event coming up, which kind of brings together so many of the things that we've been talking about, and certainly in terms of pushing it out to people beyond education as well. So Tech to the Future, I believe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much,
future, April.
Thank you so much, Nick. I was hoping you'd let me talk about this one. So I am super excited about this event. It's coming up in Chicago on May 6th. 11 to 4. And I actually was invited by World Business Chicago. That's the company that is connected to our city of Chicago tourism. They did an esports roundtable, and they asked, what can we do to make Chicago a destination city for esports? And one of the things that I said, I can do, I always believe in, look in the mirror first and see what you can do. And I think events are one of the things that colleges can do, and do in unison with each other. So Tech to the Future is May 6th. Our tagline is exploring the intersection of esports, tech education, and game design. So we've got some amazing speakers coming. I'm really excited. Josh Su, he modeled for this. He's going to, if he sees this, he's going to say, why did you lead with that? But he's the model for Liu Kang, if anyone is a Mortal Kombat fan back in the day. He also worked for Midway and did a lot of that game development, the early game development in the 90s. Right now, he's at DePaul leading their innovation center. So he's going to be our keynote speaker at our innovation center. And we're definitely merging tech and esports. Our Amazon is coming. One of our sponsors is Amazon. AWS is bringing their Deep Racer program. So that's physical racing cars that use AI to drive around and compete with each other. And SHI is bringing Hado, which is a VR game for it's just fantastic dodgeball in VR with these wonderful graphics. And LG is bringing amazing robots. And so we're really trying to showcase, and we're doing a Smash tournament and a Minecraft and Roblox and Beat Saber, all of those things, and teaching, the game design behind that, the tech setup that goes behind that, and really trying to blend those two passions so that folks know, we are a unit, we're a community, we are one.
I think just touching on what you said about Hado, we had Hado in here at the college, and for me, I kind of before we actually saw it in action, I was unsure as to what it would be. And part of what we teach here is the similarities between traditional sport and esports.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that that's probably the closest that you get. The Hado is the closest you get to the mixture of the both, because it's very physical, and like the pro athletes in sort of like, I think it's massive in Japan, etc., are incredible. They're like gymnasts, but it's all tech linked in with tech, which was really impressive. And I'd like to go back to as a comment from Michael Russell here. It says transferable skills are very important as well. Most skills learned in esports competition or scholastic esports courses transfer to other industries.
Yes.
Now that is definitely a barrier for those who don't necessarily understand esports in education, that we constantly battle against. Well, what's the point? Well, what are they going to do? They're going to become pro gamers. And there's a massive misunderstanding or unappreciation of all of those skills that we're teaching, and are essentially applicable and transferable to so many industries. You've kind of like analysis, strategic thinking, business, finance, law, physical well-being, the list goes on. And I mentioned earlier about the hesitations in relation to tech, whereas I think maybe that's the point that Michael raises there is a really valid one, in that there are still other restrictions that we are that we're battling against. Simon, coming back to game plan, how long ago, how long has it taken you to get to where you are? Because obviously we see game plan and where game plan are at now, but I'm assuming there's that development, the tech behind the platform, has taken some time.
Yeah, so the development of the platform took about 4 years to get done. So the main company that has developed, the development company behind it is Learn to Esport. It's the same company essentially, but it took about 4 years to get the final product out on the market. It's not final yet; it's still under development. But it took about 4 years, and throughout last year, as I was talking a little bit about before. We have been getting so much good feedback to be able to speed up the process of developing the platform. We have a team with 5 developers that are developing the platform every single day, and a design team, and everything goes very, very fast. So it took about 4 years to get everything where it is today.
Okay, good. Now, one thing that I found very interesting, and I'm sure it's one of those things that we're all on the same journey here, or we're involved in similar journeys, and we talked about the synergy between tech, education, and esports, and I was speaking to the CEO of Esports Scotland recently about when I was appointed as their education advisor, and that conversation very quickly turned into, once we got past the education side of it, very quickly turned into a full tech conversation, because at that point we realized that we were I'm talking to the same people within education that Esports Scotland are talking to outside of education. And then all of a sudden that link of, well, hang on a minute, this all falls in together, because Esports Scotland's focus for the last few years has been kind of like live events and tournaments and leagues. And they're now kind of like looking at that education space. And since that initial meeting, which was only kind of like 2 weeks ago, we've already had numerous meetings with numerous companies, and it's all falling together. It's all coming together. And I think generally speaking, and James, I think that's something that you would definitely be able to talk about with all your different hats that you wear. It's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a circle of companies and interests, and that circle is slowly kind of like joining, but becoming more of a globe as opposed to a sphere, if you like, because the crossover is extensive, isn't it, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's eventually it's almost 7 degrees of separation, I think, because you've got your investors, you've got your educationalists, you've got industry experts, you've got those who are desperately trying to get in for the right reasons because they've got passion and interest and they've been involved for X amount of years. You've got those that are trying to get in for the wrong reasons, and sometimes they're the ones who shout the loudest, and therefore you and I and April particularly as educators have a duty of care there to look after our students and make sure that they're being looked after, because obviously on top of that everyone's got their own Discord kind of set up and TikTok and Instagram that they can be gotten hold of if they're showcasing their talent. But it is all pivoting around the fact that there is this this huge swell, and depending on who you talk to, I'm not wishing to offend anyone or have anyone rolls their eyes, esports has been around for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever, it doesn't really matter, not really. It's now kind of heading in a direction where hopefully there's more good being done, or at the very least for the right reasons, and what April and Simon are able to demonstrate from totally different angles and totally different from how you and I are doing it, Nick, with our different hats on. We're all trying to put something across because there is this passion and there is this interest for that, really.
Okay, good. Right. I mean, is there anything? I think we're kind of like drawing to the end of the discussion. Is there anything that you would like to add, April, Simon, or James, that we haven't maybe touched on?
Yeah, I think what Michael Russell in the chat and what you highlighted about transferable skills is just so important, and that's where I'm doing my research right now in esports, working on my PhD. And that's, I think, where I'm gonna focus on flow state and just the joy that people have, and that the psychological benefits of esports. And I've had like students tell me from other countries, from particularly India and China, esports is what got them acclimated to the States. When they came here to our college, their first friends were from their esports world. And the communication, you can't downplay that enough. And you can't downplay the research. Like, our League of Legends players, they know every interaction of 150 champions. Like, they literally sit there and research as much as we're researching for dissertations practically. So I think like the review time, watching the videos, creating their highlight films, doing, there's a whole creator content component that is another outlet for creativity and stress and relief. I think that there's so many good things about esports, that really getting those out there and letting people know that it's okay to let your kids game. I think that's really important. And education it's going to flow because the best players educate themselves around everything they need to know about the games.
Okay, excellent. Right, just in answer to your question, Tim, yes, you will be able to watch this again. It will be available on LinkedIn Live, and it will be available on the Esports Trade Association website. So it just goes for me to say a few things, really. Firstly, thank you to the Esports Trade Association for putting this event on behalf of the Education Committee, of which me and April certainly are very proud members of. Don't forget, if you want more events like this, become a member. It's really easy to do at esportsta.org. Join. You can look at the ESTA calendar to find out more about all these other events and things that are going on. And don't forget, registration is now open for our Esports Next 2023 conference in Chicago. That's in August on the 22nd to the 23rd. And if you are a member of the Esports Trade Association, obviously you get a discount. So it just goes to me now to thank the panel this evening. April in Chicago, James in England, and Simon in Sweden. Thank you for your time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Nik. You're
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you, Nik.
Thank you, audience. Please find us on LinkedIn, ask away.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Definitely. It's a big community. We want to help each other grow.
Absolutely.
Rising tide raises all boats, right?
Yeah.